pretty early on, you know. I mean, I grew up in a house full of brothers, and I became quite an accomplished fibber and managed to shift the blame for things onto them. So even then there was an output for me who was skilled with words. But I think it was a classic case of it being literally the only thing I was any good at or had any interest in at school. It was just stories, making things up. So the first things I ever wrote, which had any kind of form, any kind of structure to them, probably talking about around about the age of 15. And I entered like short story competitions at the local library. Even at that age, I just writing football match reports and sending them off to the papers. Most of the time, you just never hear, but occasionally, a kindly individual would write back and say, not just yet, but stick at it. First wrote away dates in 1982 and sent it off to Penguin and got quite an emphatic rejection from them, which put me off for a while. So my lucky break really was how I came to find an agent, which was literally bumping into someone in the street. I used to manage Liverpool and the farm, and we used to have this incredibly florid Dickensian lawyer called Julian Turton, and I was in London, I walked around the corner, straight smack into Julian Turton. He said, "What are you up to? What have you been doing?" I said, "I've written this book, but I don't know what to do with it." And he said, "Oh, well, my mate, she looks after a writer called Nick Hornby, who you might have heard of." I said, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of him, yeah, he's all right, yeah." So I sent the manuscript off to her, and she agreed to take me on. And even then, because everything seemed to have taken so long getting to that point, I thought it was going to be, it was going to be a long, drawn-out process. But within about 3 weeks of that, she had 3 or 4 offers on the table. So I ended up going with Jonathan Cape, who coincidentally published. Irving Welsh published so many great writers at the time, including Roddy Doyle, who, The Commitment's one of my favourite books of all time. But the adaptation with Away Days was incredibly complex, draining, and inspiring in many ways as well. And I think that is another classic example of just sheer persistence. If you think something is good enough, if you think it has value, then you owe it to yourself never to give up. And I could always see it. I'd always seen Away Days in pictures, and I knew that world, and I knew how evocative it potentially could be. And there was so many times when different companies had the rights to the novel. The best time with it really was a Glasgow-based company called Ideal World, and they had it in development first of all Channel 4, and that's where the battle came in. There was a guy at Channel 4 called Robin Gutch who was really really into it, and he commissioned, he put a lot of money into it actually, commissioned me to write a script, commissioned a second draft, a few polishes, thought we were very very close. And then he left, he left. That was his Christmas present to us. Ultimately, it came down to a thing of, I just couldn't let it go. Ideal World had put so much money into it. They stepped aside. To cut a long story short, myself and Liverpool-based producer called Dave Hughes did it ourselves. We raised most of the money ourselves. We went for the music, we found the cast, we found the director, did everything. How do I feel about it? It's never going to be what you imagine. Two people are never going to have the same take on something. So what had been in my head for 30 years is not what came out. But nonetheless, I felt it was an absolute credit to the book, and has punched its weight. It's there in a great tradition of British cult movies that might include things like Quadrophenia and The Wicker Man and Trainspotting, and I think it's corner in its place next to them. Creative block is an excuse. No creative actually wants to create or write. There's always a cup of coffee. There's always, I'll do it after the news. Oh, it's nearly midday. I'll do it after that. I don't believe in it. I think it's only the excuse. You've just got to snap out of it and get on with it. Just keep going. I mean, a great way of kind of oxygenating the brain is to go out for a walk or go out for a ride. And that's where we take lucky living here, because you're never far away from the river or a canal or somewhere where you can get out on your bike and have a good thing.